Islam Makhachev pulls it off. He submits Dustin Poirier in the 5th round and gets his 3rd title defense in a row, tying the record for most lightweight title defenses in UFC history. And now he has the longest win streak in lightweight history with 14. And what an ending sequence Islam pulled off. He went from a single leg takedown into an ankle pick, flung Dustin on the ground, dove in for the guillotine, transitioned the guillotine into a Darce choke, and choked Dustin out. He used Dustin's favorite 2 submission techniques. The guillotine in order to get the position so he can get the finishing submission. He didn't use the guillotine necessarily to finish Dustin, and then he also used the Darce choke, which was originally Dustin Poirier's best submission move, and still probably is actually. Quite poetic in a way, and the fight turned out to be way more difficult for Islam than most of us even imagined. Dustin Poirier showed better takedown defense overall, mostly when he was in the center and not up against the fence. When he was up against the fence, he had a much harder time on defending the takedowns. All he needed was to not allow Islam to grip his hands together behind him. He landed some good punches on Islam. In fact, both of them had a bit of a competitive striking match with each other. Now, the takedown threat is always going to be a factor for Islam to incorporate more effective striking against his opponents, but for like the 3rd and 4th rounds, he did stand a lot with Dustin, and specifically was looking for the counter left. He was doing this pull back motion away from Dustin Poirier's attacks, extending the range for Dustin, and then when Islam is able to evade the punch, he fires the left straight, and sometimes would even follow up with the right hand, very similar to what Conor McGregor did to Dustin Poirier in their 2nd fight. That was one of the main techniques that Islam was going to land shots on Dustin Poirier. But the fight got very scary in the 1st round, where that sequence happened for the first time. Dustin Poirier steps forward with the jab, and Islam looked to slip his head on the inside of the jab, moving it to the right, and as he was moving, Dustin does graze the jab and looks to have caused an abrasion on Islam's left eye. And Islam goes to counter him with the left hand, catching him pretty good over the punch, and he was able to blitz in with an awkward combination, force Dustin on the defensive, moving backwards toward the fence. And this is where you see the intelligence of Islam Makhachev's footwork. He's pressing hard towards Dustin, makes a big hop forward, almost like he's about to pressure him for a takedown, because Dustin understands where he's at in the cage. His back is not far away from the fence, so he locks and loads a left uppercut in order to intercept the takedown from Islam Makhachev, but Islam predicted it. He pulls his head away, moves slightly back. Dustin thinks Islam's going to throw another counter punch for him missing his own, but in fact, Islam changes it up and goes to the takedown this time, completely catching Dustin Poirier by surprise. This is very intelligent from Islam Makhachev. Islam is threatening with a double leg, and he does this very often where he makes the opponent think like he's going to try to finish the double, but he switches into the single leg, locks his hands around it, picks them up, and slams them. And that's where you saw things get very dicey for Dustin, where Islam had a very technical grappling sequence where he got the back, and he does it by forcing in a Kimura. The strength of Islam, how he just grabbed his arm and turned it behind his back, is quite impressive. Islam is very, very strong, but Dustin was slick on how he got out of that. When I first saw this Kimura, I thought Islam had it. I thought he was going to finish this. He got it all the way behind Dustin Poirier's back, pretty much fully locked in. But look what Dustin does. He scoots himself back. He doesn't focus on the grip necessarily. He focuses on the position of Islam and himself. So he scoots back and kicks out with his left leg toward Islam. Look at that left leg right there. He's kicking towards Islam's left leg as well. This is going to cause Islam to have to shift his position, and he jumps to get closer to Dustin's upper body. But while he's jumping like that, it causes a bigger space under Islam, and Dustin turns under him, taking away the Kimura lock and also the position under Islam. And there would be a lot of grapplers that would let go of the Kimura, thinking that they've lost the submission, so they want to stand up and follow Dustin's movement like that. But Islam does it another way. He keeps the Kimura lock. He doesn't let go of it, and he just rides with it, rotates around Dustin. Look how he still has the Kimura lock and seamlessly rotates around Dustin to get his back, all while Dustin was trying to get back up to his feet. And throughout the whole 1st round, Dustin did a very good job of fighting off the choke. He had impressive hand fighting against Islam. Dustin also had a pretty cool grappling sequence where he was bent over, head toward the fence, Islam behind him with his hands locked around Dustin. So Dustin goes and hits the switch to reverse the position and get out of the grip of Islam Makhachev. So he's putting his left arm between Islam's legs in order to grab a grip on the inside of the thigh, and he's also turning his body into Islam. This breaks Islam's grip, gets him to fall on his knees, and now Dustin can rise up. He rotates around Islam to get his back away from the fence because he knows if he stands up from there, Islam's going to shoot another takedown, and he's going to have to fend that one off. So by rotating in this position here, he wants to get Islam closer to the fence. So from the switch, he stands up and lands an elbow, and Islam is doing a really good job with the 1-2 1-2 or sometimes even double up on the jab and landing the straight after. The reason as to why is because Dustin was always leaning away from everything with his hands down. This made the jab a very good tool to get Dustin to lean all the way back like that, so then Islam's longer range left straight is going to catch Dustin at the end of the punch. This happened both when Islam was throwing just the 1-2 and also when he was doubling up on the jab and throwing the straight after. And he would have another variation of this. He would fake the jab and the straight in order to connect with a right hook. So look what he does here. He pumps the jab forward, makes Dustin look to parry it with the left hand. You can see Dustin's left hand right there. He wants to parry it inward and he leans back away. Dustin constantly leans away from jabs. Islam shows his left hand and leans his shoulder that direction, making it look like he's going to throw it out there, which gets Dustin to turn away from Islam's left shoulder. Because if he turns away and a left straight came at him, he'd be able to move his head with the punch, decreasing the impact of it. But Islam anticipated it, and turning his head that direction is perfect for Islam's right hook to intercept the head movement, catching Dustin Poirier pretty good with that punch. The low hands was a common thing for Dustin, especially in like the third round onward. In fact, Dustin became a lot more sluggish with his defense the further the fight went. Hands down in very weird spots. Like you'll see right here, Islam was able to slip on the inside of Dustin Poirier's jab, and he tries to counter over the top with that left hand. The counter left from Islam was a main weapon of his in the stand-up, and when Islam is countering with the left, he usually likes to follow it up with the right hand. So he throws a right to the body that looks like it got defended by Dustin, parrying the punch inward. And as you can see from Dustin's stance, he has a defense up. This is called a stonewall guard. It's a defensive stance you'll see in boxing. Your lead elbow upward like that, and your power hand is up, defending yourself on that side. But then strangely enough, Dustin drops both of his hands and looks to just move backwards, chin in the air and hands down, and Islam catches him with a clean left straight to the jaw. I don't understand why he just dropped his hands like that all of a sudden. Maybe he didn't expect Islam to continue the combination, and if that's the case, he got his eyes off Islam. And it's not the only time he's done this. Even here when he's throwing the jab and then he hops forward after it, look at the stance he settles in, hands down at his waist, and Islam pops him in the face with 2 jabs, gets Dustin backing up again. And you can look at what happens here. So Islam tricks Dustin Poirier with his footwork, kind of similar when Islam stepped forward and Dustin thought that he was going to go for a takedown, so he wanted to intercept it with the uppercut. Islam slightly hops forward and then hops away when he sees that Dustin is throwing out a jab, and the jab itself actually didn't have a lot of telegraph. The elbow wasn't really flaring out much. It wasn't really cocked back. The only thing is it came kind of low, right? It came up closer from the hip. Even just from that alone, Islam was able to see the jab and he hops away from it, causing Dustin Poirier to miss the jab and overextend. Look how his right shoulder drops and his upper body is leaning forward. And that's where Islam doubles up on his jab again and lands a left straight behind it, as Dustin is trying to lean away after getting hit by the first jab. Great stuff from Islam Makhachev. We got some other cool striking sequences from Islam Makhachev that really shows his progression in the stand-up. And doing all of this against Dustin Poirier is very impressive. So Dustin's hopping with his jab again. Islam sees it and slips his head on the inside of it, which actually gets his head and body closer to Dustin Poirier's. If he slipped his head on the outside of it and followed with his body, he would actually be at a further distance away from Dustin's body. And another important detail here is when Dustin hopped forward with the jab, he also squared himself as he tried to line up the left hand. Islam lands a clean counter uppercut, followed up by a right hook. I've been saying for years, Islam has very good eyes, man. It's what makes him a really good counter puncher. Look at his slipping ability here. Dustin goes forward with the left hand this time, not the jab. His jab got countered so many times throughout this fight, so he tries something a little bit new and a bit more sluggish. He swings a big left overhand with no setup. Literally nothing to set it up or to trick Islam to get him to fall into the punch. So as Islam ducks under and gets his head on the outside of it, toward his right, he has a clean target right there. Look at the big opening on Dustin Poirier's body. He rips an uppercut there, but Dustin did a really good job of landing a bunch of different body shots on Islam as well, especially when Islam was clinching up with him, just barraging the body right left constantly as he started to throw caution into the wind in the stand-up. But he did have a clean technical body shot here, getting it from distance. So he steps forward and fakes the jab, getting Islam to instantly start leaning away. Then he fakes the left straight. Islam looks to slip his head on the inside of it while also countering Dustin Poirier with the right hook. This would mean that he would be able to get his head on the inside and the right hook comes over the punch of Dustin Poirier, but it was just a feint, and because he didn't really extend it much, Dustin was able to bring it back into his stance and block Islam's right hook as he rips in a right uppercut to the body. Beautiful stuff from Dustin Poirier. And this was a pretty cool combo from Islam in the 5th round where he steps forward and feints low like he's gonna go for a takedown, But strangely enough, Dustin doesn't anticipate a takedown. He actually thought it was going to be a punch to the head. So he picks up his guard and lowers his chin. And it was in fact a punch. Islam goes and throws a right hook, throwing it very wide around the guard, and he's punching with like the side of his hand. It's usually how Islam throws his hooks. So he lands around the guard, then throws forward a left single collar to control the position and the head of Dustin Poirier, and he wants to drive his right uppercut into Dustin's face while in the clinch. Lands that pretty clean, and Dustin's not letting up on his defense here. He's keeping the exact same guard and not changing anything up. So Islam ties up with both hands and throws a left knee to the body immediately afterward. So great combination here from Islam. Right hook around the guard, single collar, right uppercut, and then left knee to the body. Now, I do have to mention here, there were a few fouls. There was an accidental head clash where it looked like it busted Dustin's nose, and that for sure had to have some effect in the fight. Again, it seemed like it was accidental. I don't think Islam meant to drive his head into Dustin's, and Dustin was also moving at the same time, so it's unfortunate. I wish the referee saw it and actually gave Dustin a bit of time there. But not only that, crazy enough, so we know about all the eye pokes that happened throughout the card, right? And these were the first new gloves that they tested. The gloves are supposed to stop people from eye poking. Well, it didn't really. In fact, it seemed like this card had record-breaking eye pokes. And not only that, these gloves are supposed to not allow a fighter to dig their fingers in there. Islam happened to do it in the 5th round. Dustin tried to pull away from Islam. And you could see right here, Islam has control of Dustin's left hand. And you can see where his fingers are inside the glove right there. Islam lets go of it, and you can see Dustin gets frustrated. He's like, yo, come on, man. And Keith Peterson jumped in for a second as well. Now, good thing that Islam didn't keep holding on to it and, capitalize on that moment to land some kind of strike or something. So he did let go of it, but you can't be digging your fingers into gloves and stuff, And that's ultimately the end of the breakdown, guys. I hope you guys enjoyed it. And if you did, make sure to give this video a like, make sure to subscribe, hit the bell for notifications. Islam wants to fight Leon Edwards next, or whoever is going to be the welterweight champion. I think he should fight Arman, and by beating Arman, it leaves him enough time for another #1 contender to contest him, right? Because after Arman, who is there? Potentially Max, but Max is going back down to 145. Is it Gamrot? Is Gamrot next? I think he needs like a win or two before he fights for a belt. And other than that, there's like no one else there. Charles is coming off a loss. He needs a win, and he's also looking for money fights. So it looks like he doesn't care to fight the other contenders right now. Justin Gaethje needs time off, and he's coming off a knockout loss to Max Holloway. Dustin just lost to Islam. Let's say Arman loses to Islam. Then there's really nobody else. So I think Islam should fight Arman next. If he beats him, let him go up to welterweight. But if he chooses to do it now, I don't have too much against it. He does have 3 title defenses. Now, 2 of them are against the same opponent, who is at 145 or not a 155 contender. He just defeated one of the best contenders in Dustin Poirier. And if you could do the same against Arman, that would be perfect, because then he wouldn't hold up the #1 contender from fighting him. But we'll see what they do. Maybe they give him the double champ opportunity.